Good af good morning. Never used to doing these in the morning. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Happy Monday. Thank you for taking your time out of your day to join us today. We do have a full agenda today, so we're going to jump right into it. I'm going to hand it off to Mary for being our MC today. We do have a few guest speakers to join us today, so let me move us into the room and I will let us go.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us first thing on a Monday morning, or for some of you, it may not be first thing, but we welcome you to our meeting. We had hoped to see all of you in person in Houston as part of our Texas Conference on Ending Homelessness, but as you know, we canceled that for health and safety reasons. But we are so glad that you're here today with us virtually. So we will have more of a meeting like we usually have, just on a different day and, as Craig mentioned, at a different time. So good morning, welcome to the week. Um, we're glad all of you are here. We especially wanted to, though, welcome board members who are here for our CoC board and to announce who was elected to the board for the upcoming 2 years. So, Craig, if you will get to that slide, um, or I can do it actually. So, as you know, we had board elections just a couple weeks ago, and wanted to tell you. Oh, okay, Craig, I will need your help to bring up those slides. We've got some members who are continuing into the next year, and that is Daphne Adams, Catherine Bisson, Tavia Hatfield, Kyle Moore, Daisy Lopez, Pamela Segura, and Emily Schaefer Northrup. And you'll see their names on here in the yellow. So they're entering year 2. But for new members who are beginning their second term, so they already served one whole term and now they got reelected to serve a second term, we've got Marcus Butler, John Meyer, Andrea Omajolo, and Linda White. So congratulations to the 4 of you on being elected again. And we've got 4 brand new members to us who are starting their first term. Courtney Cross with the City of Denton, Natasha Hayden. Natasha is Executive Director at North Texas Youth Connection. Daphne Jackson. She is the admin assistant and co-owner of A Servant's Heart, Texas. And Ronnie Odom with the City of Texarkana, Texas Housing Authority. So we welcome all of you and look forward to working with you over the upcoming year. You'll see here that we have mapped out the geographic area that each board member represents. Blue means that they are continuing on from last year. Yellow means that they are newly elected this year. And then green means both. So those counties are covered by people who are both continuing and new members. So you can see that there's a lot of opportunity in the next round of board elections for representation from other parts of the state that aren't currently represented. But we wanted to give you that idea. They don't actually represent their geography in that they're not elected to represent their geography. They are elected to represent specific seats, as you saw on that first slide. But of course, the geography plays a role in the work that they do. So we just wanted you to know where they're located. And then finally, we wanted to say thank you to our outgoing board members. These 4 folks are not going to be serving with us anymore. They've ended their term. But we thank them very much for the time that they did serve. Norma Mercado, she's with Bastrop ISD, one of our homeless education liaisons. Danny Shaw with the City of Denton, Barry Wheeler with Movement Mortgage, and Antonio Williams with City of Texarkana Housing Authority. So thank you to the 4 of them for representing all of our members so well over the past 4 years and making some really solid policy decisions for all of us. All right. At this time, I am going to actually turn it over to our current board chair, Daphne Adams, for our State of the CoC address. Daphne? Daphne, I think you might be muted.
Good morning. Can you,
There you
okay,
are.
there we go. Sorry about that. The joys of technology. I would think I had it figured out by now, but apparently I don't. Good morning. As Mary stated, my name is Daphne Adams, and I am the current chair for the COC board. Uh, I just wanted to start off by thanking you all again for being here today. The past year has been an influential one. We continue to deal with COVID-19. We've seen increased attention on and action to address racial equity, and we plan for an administered CARES Act and American Rescue Plan funds. Through it all, we kept our focus on serving people at risk of and experiencing homelessness. And as a COC, we made great progress. We will have a presentation later in the meeting that will show accomplishments over the past year, but I would like to go ahead and highlight a few things. Communities across the 215 counties in Texas worked every day to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring, and here are a few of those. Abilene declared an end to chronic homelessness by participating in Built for Zero and developed a system that has the capacity to serve every chronically homeless person. Built for Zero is a methodology, a movement, and proof of what is possible. The movement is made up of more than 80 cities and counties that have committed to measurably end homelessness, one population at a time. Using data, these communities have changed how local homeless response systems work and the impact they can achieve. In May of this year, Lubbock began participating in Built for Zero also. 16 communities work with Homebase and the THN staff to create local action plans that will strengthen local housing crisis response systems and help the COC to reach its strategic plan goals. Agencies receive various funds, program money, and Emergency Solutions Grant CARES Act funds to help people obtain and maintain housing. Agencies worked with local governments to plan for and administer CARES Act and American Rescue Plan funds. 30 local homeless coalitions worked across the COC to plan, deliver, and evaluate housing and services in their communities to prevent and end homelessness. The COC lead agency worked in partnership with the COC board to ensure the operations of the COC continued. The COC board continued to set policies for the COC that guided the work. The COC established 2 new communities focused on subpopulations, the Ending Veteran Homelessness Committee and the Ending Youth Homelessness Committee. Having committees to develop and implement plans to end homelessness for these populations should get the COC closer to achieving those goals. For the fiscal year 2020 COC program, HUD renewed all currently funded projects without holding a competition, which allowed COCs and projects to focus on serving people instead of competing for the COC program funds. Programs in the COC were awarded just under $10 million, and THN received $1.74 million to facilitate COC planning and to administer the Homeless Management Information System. The fiscal year 2021 COC program competition began in August. THN received 74 intents to apply, the largest number ever. Applications were due on September 22nd, and we are excited about the funding request for the balance of state. The Strategic Planning Committee spearheaded the development of the strategic plan. THN staff created a COC action plan, and communities created local action plans. All of those are setting the strategic direction for the COC over the next few years. As part of the strategic planning process, the Strategic Planning Committee and the COC board developed a COC mission statement, the first one that the COC has ever had. With more stakeholders participating in the CoC through ESG, CV, the Barriers Fund Program, Local Homeless Coalition Development, Local Action Plans, Coordinated Entry, and HMIS and comparable databases, and new partnerships with public housing agencies through the Emergency Housing Voucher Program, the CoC is set up well for another productive year. Some of the highlights of work planned for the 2021-2022 year is implementing the strategic plan by carrying out activities in the CoC action plan and local action plans, addressing gaps identified in the gap analysis, centering the voices of persons with lived experience of homelessness to guide CoC's work, developing plans to end veteran homelessness and chronic homelessness across the CoC, addressing racial equity in meaningful ways that center racial justice and decrease racial disparities in our CoC system. Regionalizing the CoC, working with stakeholders to explore how addressing homelessness by region could provide more support to local housing crisis response systems and better outcomes for people experiencing homelessness. I want to thank you all, the stakeholders in the CoC, from CoC board members, CoC committee members, local homeless coalitions, coordinated entry planning entities, HMIS users, persons with lived experience of homelessness, shelter, housing, and supportive service providers, mainstream programs, local governments, faith communities, and community advocates and volunteers for working together in 2020-2021. We look forward to another great year. Thank you.
Thank you, Daphne, for those words of success and highlighting what we accomplished over the past year and what we're looking forward to in the upcoming year. All right, so we are in good shape, as she said, for another year of success. Past year has been challenging in some ways, but also a good one. So thank you all again for what you do with us. All right, we are going to transition over to our next agenda item, which is our biggest section for today, and that is talking about the CoC strategic plan and the CoC action plan and local action plans. And to get us started, I'm going to turn it over to Chad Wheeler, who was the chair of the strategic planning, or is still actually the chair of the strategic planning committee. Chad?
Good morning. Thank you, Mary. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great.
Yes.
All right. Well, welcome again. I have the pleasure of going over a few of the components of the strategic plan that we have put together over the last 2 years. If you can remember, before COVID at the Conference on Ending Homelessness in Houston, we had the initial conversations about the strategic plan with a lot of you. We received your input, and there were some kind of feedback sessions where we heard from you the things that you thought were kind of priorities for the Texas Balance of State to focus on. And so we kind of kicked it off 2 years ago this time, and over the last 2 years we have been working together with a number of representatives across the Balance of State and the staff with THN supporting that work, and then also the input from Homebase, who reviewed a lot of data in the Balance of State and helped shape this plan as well. So this has been a long process that has been formed from the members of the Balance of State up. And so hopefully what you'll hear in the strategic plan is very familiar. There's not a lot, in my view, that's out of the blue. Most of these are things that should be pretty familiar within your communities. These are things that most of us talk about a long time and have been for a long time. So let me get into it. Craig, if you want to go to the next slide. Okay, there you go. So you see here are some of the things that came together to create the strategic plan. 15 members. We began meeting in September 2019, and we pulled data from all over the place. from things that you're familiar with, as well as people with lived experience and technical assistance providers, and all that. Okay, next slide. And so here are the key elements of the strategic plan. If you haven't seen this already, I think it's on THN's website. You'll see kind of the four components here, the executive summary. The bulk of the plan is the goals, strategies, and activities for significant impact. I'm going to go over a little bit of that today. And then we have some appendices with a CoC action plan. And I think Mary's going to speak a little bit about that here in a bit, and then the data that was used to support the strategic plan. So next slide. All right, so here are the four main goals of the strategic plan. Number one, improve the current housing crisis response system. And so this is kind of like the big picture that involves coordinated entry. It involves, the components working together, and lots of strategies to help accomplish that goal. The second one, increase the capacity of and access to housing and supportive services. Obviously, this is a huge issue for a lot of us and in a lot of our communities. We know a lot of things that we need to do, but the end placement into housing, sometimes those resources just aren't there. And so obviously increasing our capacity within the balance of state and the ability for people to access housing and supportive services. Number three, use data more efficiently. So what we want to do is things like drilling into HMIS to see information that is real time and active statuses. If you're familiar with what they do in BFZ, some of that is a big part of what we're doing with Built for Zero, where you're trying to use your data to really better understand what things look like on a more real-time basis, and then using that data to drive the solutions that we try to develop. Number four, increase community engagement, improve public perception, and shape public policy. You know that homelessness is and has become more and more politicized and more of a center interest in Texas and in a lot of our communities, both at the state level and in our local communities. Politicians, local perception, local issues around homelessness are a much bigger deal than they've ever been. And so part of our goal here in the balance of state is to engage in those systems and help improve the understanding of homelessness, as well as the solutions to homelessness. Number five, the last goal in the strategic plan is to increase funding to address homelessness. Obviously, this is another big one that's an obvious for a lot of us. This is anything from housing to supportive services to rental assistance to capacity building. There are a lot of things that we're wanting to do to try to improve the funding landscape across the balance of state. So those are the five big goals. Because of time, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail into the strategies. Hopefully that piques your interest and you'll go look at the document. And Mary, again, is going to have some information to talk about how we can use this document in our local communities to try to develop plans to pursue some of these goals. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Mary.
All right, thank you, Chad. And if Craig, you could bring up my slides for action plan, that would be great. So as Chad said, we've created the Strategic Planning Committee, led this creation of the strategic plan for the CoC. And we on staff at THN, we are the lead, what's called the lead agency for the balance of state CoC. So we work with all of you around the CoC to carry out the requirements of the CoC and to help to set things up like coordinated entry, to operate the Homeless Management Information System or HMIS, and also to help us all get to where we are high performing and making sure we are working as well as we can to help people experiencing homelessness. So the CoC action plan is part of the strategic plan, but it's the part where we've spelled out how we're going to carry out the strategic plan within the first year or two. So you'll see it's in Appendix A of the strategic plan, and again, mostly year 1 and year 2. And we prioritized from all the proposed activities for years 1 through 5. So some of the numbering might look a little strange, but it's because we selected some items to accomplish in year 1 and other items will be in years 2 or 3 or something like that. So thank you. Craig has put a link to the strategic plan. I had also put a link in there to where you can find it on our website. And as Chad said, the 5 goals in the plan were the same 5 goals, clearly, that we used in the CoC action plan. So you'll see that that's how the action plan is divided. So I just wanted to show you one page from the action plan to point out where some of the main ideas are. You'll see at the top of every goal sheet is, whoops, hold on. There we go. So we've got 5 goals. You'll see I chose goal 4 as the example here. So that's in darker green. Increase community engagement, improve public perception, and shape public policy is goal 4. And then one of the strategies under goal 4 is strategy 4, increase involvement of persons with lived experience of homelessness. Then under each strategy, we've got measures where those are the items that we can look to see where are we starting, and then at the end of year 1, where are we ending. And ideally, we will see improvement in these measures that let us know that we have made progress on increasing involvement of persons with lived experience of homelessness. And then under each strategy, we've got some proposed activities. So you'll see here on the screen, for example, 4.4a, develop a work group of people with current and recent, within the past 3 years, lived experience of homelessness that will consult with THN staff and CoC stakeholders on CoC activities. And then under that, we've broken it down even further into actions that we'll take. In the next column to the right, you'll see who the responsible parties are, the lead and the partners. There's a timeline, and then finally some source documents. So if you're looking at the action plan, this is the format that all of the goals and strategies will take. So hopefully you'll be able to navigate your way through. If you have any questions though, or any feedback, or you want to help us with any of these strategies or activities, certainly feel free to reach out to me. Mary Stalkey. Again, I'm the Director of Engagement, mary@thn.org. And just to let you know, we are going to assess and report progress over the next year as we're implementing our action plan. We'll be reporting to the CoC board, the Strategic Planning Committee, and to all of you through these general meetings, and also to the public on our website. And one note, the Strategic Planning Committee has tasked the staff with making sure that we are collaborating with persons with lived experience of homelessness. So we're actually going to use that group that we just talked about to help us revise and update the plan for implementation in year 2. So the voices of persons with lived experience, including Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, their voices will be centered in the update to the plan, a bit more so than it is in the current plan. So that's an exciting development. And now I would like to turn over to the next agenda item, which is talking about local action plans. And you may remember in July of this year, we held a community planning session and invited community members to come and work with us and with our consultants from Home Base to develop a local action plan for their own community that was based on the CoC's strategic plan. So the idea there was that, we've got this guiding strategic plan, and then there are some actions and strategies on the CoC level, which is what THN will be spearheading with committees and the board and other stakeholders. And then we invited the local communities to come and create their own action plan, because the stronger that their communities can be, then the stronger our whole CoC is. And we were excited that 16 communities were able to join us. And we've got 3 people today from some of those communities who are going to be answering some questions, so that you can get a sense of what their community went through in case you'd like your community to do the same thing. So we have got Vashil Fernandez, and he is with the City of Texarkana City Government. Alice Jewell with McKenna Foundation in New Braunfels, and Shane Williamson from BCSS Health and Human Services in Kerrville. So the 3 of them and I, surprise to all of you, Margaret, who is going to lead the panel today, is not able to be with us, so I will be leading the panel discussion, or facilitating the panel. So Vashil, Alice, and Shane, I don't know if you want to show yourself on screen, but if you would like to, you're welcome to do that. And I have 3 questions that Margaret had created for us, and I'll ask them. Hello. And we can just do a round robin style of answering if you'd like.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So our first one is, what are the biggest needs in your communities related to homelessness, and how do the goals you selected in your local action plan meet those needs? So Shane, would you like to start?
Sure. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear
We're
you.
good. Okay, great. Yes, within our community, affordable housing is something that's a critical component within our community, and we also have, basically, also we have annual restrictions in the community, which cause us not to be able to utilize that as a lower income for housing. We also have transitional housings for 27-year-olds and above. We have some housing for people who are 18 to 26, but we don't have housing for people who are 27 years above, unless they're domestic violence sober living, or there's veterans supports that are there to meet those needs, but not for just the general population. We also have emergency shelter need some changes within that, because within our emergency shelter, you can only stay there 3 days, and then you have to be out, and then you have to leave at 7:30 in the morning. When you have, so that's an issue. We also have an issue of coordinated entry to assess the needs and connect them with proper case managers to meet those needs, and also and just knowing the resources that are within other communities. If we don't have the resources available to help an individual that we know collectively outside of our outside of our community, what places that they have access to. Another most critical is just verifiable data to support the need of homeless supports, and that's really just networking with other community organizations to get one voice, so that we can address these things to local officials and get more buy-in. So those are some of the challenges that we have.
All right, thank you, Shane. And I'll say again, what are the biggest needs in your community related to homelessness, and how do the goals you selected meet those needs? Alice, would you
Oh,
like to go next? Oh, sorry, Shane, yes?
sorry. Let me just go ahead. The goals that we did is to establish a local homeless coalition. We did not have one, so we started that, and then And then we also are collecting data to share with the community on affordable housing and homelessness. That's another goal that our group is setting up. And then also we're setting up meetings with stakeholders and people with lived experience in order to better understand our community dynamics and be able to have verifiable evidence to be with to communicate with other people. We also are on our committee. We have city council, and that city council member is connected with other agency or other boards that she's on that has more of those city council members. So we're hoping to get that. And then lastly, the other one is to complete a data worksheet so that we understand what the baseline supports we have available and then what we need in order to improve and fill in the gaps with. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Shane. Alice, would you be willing to go next? I see you, but I'm not hearing you. All right, so maybe let's give Alice a few minutes. Vishil, would you be ready to go?
Sure. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Perfect. But I think one of the biggest needs we see in Texarkana region is just the need for mental health care. Not, I mean, specifically as we look at our outpatient client, most of our outpatient clients are homeless population. Overall, mental health care is a big need in our community, but specifically related to the homeless population. To kind of get them stabilized, especially those people that are chronically homeless. The other big need in our community is, and I've talked to Jim and a lot of people at THN about just, we don't have a PSH, which is a permanent supportive housing. That's also something that we need, and that's one thing we haven't addressed in our annual action plan, because a lot of that is just being able to have the resources to facilitate the permanent supportive housing. But what we are doing in space of that is working with our housing authority, and we're trying to get housing choice vouchers to give towards our homeless population, those who have been in our rapid rehousing program and have been making progress. And one of the other goals we've tried to do is create job training opportunities to help those people that have been in the program so they can better able to take care of themselves, which get themselves sustainable, to open rooms for to bring in other homeless people in the program as well.
All right, thank you, Vishil. Alice? Oh, I saw her screen moving just a moment ago, but now it looks like on my end she's having some trouble. Oh, there you are. Can you hear us now, Alice? Alice, I wonder if turning off your video might help. All right, Craig, could you possibly troubleshoot with Alice, and I'll go on to the next question for Shane and Vishil. So our second question is, what are some of the challenges your community faces regarding planning for services related to homelessness? What will it take to reach your goals and are to overcome those challenges? for example, community buy-in or funding or outreach. So some of the challenges your community faces regarding planning for services, and what will it take to reach your goals or overcome those challenges? Want to go ahead, Shane?
Yes. One of the challenges we have within our community is when we first got tasked with developing a local homeless coalition within our group. Again, we're still in the development stages. You know, our first meeting we had 6. This last meeting we had 12. So we're still getting kind of the groundwork and getting people involved. But um, our housing is very limited within Kirk County where we live. Um, and then also one of the things, the foundation was emergency shelter, and so we set up a meeting with the Salvation Army in order to kind of identify, um, we need an emergency shelter that can really help the local organizations, and based on that, we found out that the emergency shelter was going to close down. They said they only have 1.5 people a night, and they cannot facilitate, and so therefore they were thinking that they no longer need it. And so we said, no, 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 we need it. And it's something that's very important. And we think that part of the issues that we're having with you're not seeing a lot is because you have a 3-day maximum. You can stay there 3 days, but then you can't come back for like 3 to 4 months later. So every 3 days, people are not able to get service, or after 3 days, they can't receive services. And then during the day, they have to leave from 7:30 to 5:30. Now, for some people who are local, that was okay, but for people who are I talked to like 6 nonprofits that house people, and they said we need people, we need an emergency shelter that helps support people for longer periods of time. And so, in order to, we said we need. So we talked with Salvation Army and let them know that there's some issues, and we also let them know, based on this information that we got from THN, that they didn't even know, the Salvation Army, who has a new captain, did not know that there was. They were the only emergency shelter within 19 counties. And so by getting THN and Salvation Army on a conference call with our local homeless coalition, we were able to address this challenge. And by talking with local nonprofits and letting them know, say, we have people who are trafficked victims who need emergency shelter as we're transitioning them into our housing, and they need to be able to stay there for longer periods of time. Then we found out the Salvation Army also didn't have any funding. And so what we're coordinating with in order to meet this challenge is that we're working with them to, the nonprofits, instead of putting people into hotels or motels, we're looking at and Salvation Army has agreed to doing a memorandum of understanding in order to allow nonprofits to have on their case management that they can stay longer at the Salvation Army for extended periods of time, longer than 3 days, in order to help with that transition. So we're having to address some of the emergency shelter issues and make sure we can keep that emergency shelter and help provide funding, because they don't receive any government grants. They only have a store that helps fund it, and then they can only have one staff. So those are dynamics that we're trying to pull the nonprofits together and say, hey, we need this emergency shelter, and then utilize them to help fund it as well, instead of just the Salvation Army supporting it on their own. So that's an issue that we're facing. So networking and support, and so how to reach those goals and overcome those challenges: networking and support of organizations addressing homelessness, and that share the same concern, and must be able to be one voice instead of many voices, and then collaborate and function together. So that's part of the goal, is to try to draw nonprofits together to connect and network in order to be a unified support, instead of just a dispersed support and really everybody just doing their own thing and not knowing what anybody else is doing. That's what our challenge is, and then how we're trying to address it.
Thank you, Shane. Wow, that's a vivid example of learning something about your services in your community and people rallying around to everybody contributing to a solution. So thank you for
Yes.
that. Bashil, same question for you. What are some of the challenges your community faces regarding planning for services related to homelessness? And what will it take to reach your goals and or to overcome those challenges?
I think one of the other things is just, we mentioned it, I mentioned it earlier, is just mental instability, mental health instability within our community. Um, and we just not having all the resources to kind of address that issue. But one of the things that we've gotten better at as a coalition is all the different organizations that are a part of the coalition. Um, sorry, I was hearing some feedback. Can y'all still hear me?
I think you're good. Yeah, I think you're good now,
Perfect.
Vashil.
One of the things that we've been good as a coalition is just sharing the resources that we have. We try to remain in good constant communication of what all's happening in the community. But also we have a unified voice where the other day we had a meeting with our law enforcement and our we had a community health court which deals with our mental illness. We have communication with them, trying to figure out what we can do together, and we also spoke to the city manager, which also spoke to the state, just to try to get more resources for the Texarkana area to address the issue of mental health. And another thing I think that's growing into a challenge now is that encampment ban that just came in. We're trying to figure out how to work that. We obviously want to abide by the laws, but we also want to help those people that need help. And so that's one of the conversations we've had over the last month and a half in the coalition of like, how do we address that? How do we bring in law enforcement and work with them and work with our homeless population to address that issue and help those people that are in need of the services to take advantage of the services that all these different agencies are offering.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, so some similar things about getting more people and organizations involved with the issue of addressing homelessness with a unified voice. All right, I think I'm still not seeing Alice being able to join us. So let's go on to question number 3. And you all have already talked a little bit about this. What community organizations and individuals has it been helpful to include in your efforts? If there are additional ones you haven't already talked about. I know you mentioned a few in the last question.
Yes, the ones who, because we're trying to identify specifically the housing community groups that do have either temporary, permanent, transitional housing. Obviously, Salvation Army is a critical component there because all the agencies are in need of collaborating with them, and they've also said that one, they'll do the memorandum of understanding, but they also said they'll do coordinated entry support. And so they can now be a drop-off center for, and then from there, their case managers and also can be the lead in directing people to specific groups of people. So, for instance, Salvation Army, the veterans, Medina Children's Home, Arms of Hope, Enhanced Horizons. Again, they deal with young adults. Arms of Hope works with kids, works with mothers and children or fathers and children. Mercy Gate helps with trafficking. Light on the Hill helps with single family homes. Sober Living Homes, I've connected with them who have a liaison that works with all the sober living homes. We have MHDD is also a necessary support for helping with the mental health and also developmental disability. And then also city council. That's also is a crucial in order to get funding or in order to get grants or more support from buy-in from the community in order to help with housing. We need more support from them as well. And by doing this, it also who also is another group is the city officials, as we stated, other city officials that are in the group that are needed to collaborate with them. So those are some of the agencies that we're targeting right now. One, like I said, just to get a baseline of data and also to find out, what's their eligibility, how many beds do they have, and just getting a point of contact. So when we find one homeless person, if we say, okay, this person can work, this person will work with them, and then if it ends up that falls through, then we have another case manager at a point of entry that can maybe follow up or help them and keep them in the Salvation Army for longer than 3 days. As long as they're, if they're in a case management support, then those agencies can all rally around the one person that's in need. And that's something that we haven't had in the past. It's just like, well, I think maybe this or maybe that, or go call this person or go call that person. But this will be a big support in helping all those members work together.
Great, thank you. And Vashil, I'll turn it over to you too. What community organizations and individuals has it been helpful to include in your efforts?
Most of them, I think Shane mentioned quite a few, obviously city officials. We have a Salvation Army, but we have a Community Health Corps. We had our HUD-VASH people to help with the veterans. We have our Housing Authority. Antonio Williams and his group has been really great. Then we have Mission Texarkana, who's really out there with a lot of our homeless population. Cody and Elena and the rest of their crew really connect with a lot of our population. We also have Randy Sams, which is one of the shelter on the Texas side, but we also have Habitat for Humanity. But having all these different groups, but specifically having very good communication with all these different groups coming together to help figure out the needs of our homeless population and help to meet those needs or guide these people to where their needs can best be met.
All right, well, I want to thank you both so much. We do need to get to our next agenda item, but congratulations on developing a plan and bringing together a lot of groups in your community to help work through the plan. We look forward to seeing how it's going to go over the next year. And again, we appreciate you sharing your news with us today.
Thank you.
you. All right, then I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jim Ward for the annual review of the CoC governance charter.
Hey, thanks, Mary. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jim Ward. I'm the Director of Planning here at the Texas Homeless Network. Can you help me out with that? Thank you. Yeah, so Director of Planning here at the Texas Homeless Network. Happy to talk with the... Craig, can you help me out with that? Thank you, Craig. Happy to talk with y'all about the governance charters. So before we thanks, Sam. Before we get started with that, the governance charter is essentially, when you boil it all down, is the relationship between the Texas Homeless Network and the Continuum of Care as an organizational group. It covers a wide variety of things from policy to the structure of the CoC. So all the things that we've been kind of talking about this morning, committee structure, board structure, It is essentially intended to be the document that someone can look at and begin to understand how the Texas Balance Estate continuum of care functions. So it is a legislatively required component of the continuum of care. We've had a governance charter in place since, I believe, since the inception of the CoC, certainly since the time I've been here. And it is something that HUD expects that the CoC reviews and updates at minimum annually, but as often as needed. And so we typically will use the October meeting of the general membership to review the governance charter. We are kind of uh, expanding how we do the review of that governance charter. So it's not just in this meeting today. When we're done here a little bit later on today, the governance charter will go up onto our public comment portal for stakeholder review and feedback before it ultimately moves on to the CoC board for review and approval. And so Craig has so graciously posted the current governance charter on in the chat. I was not planning to share that document because it is a lot of information. I don't think we would be able to do it justice. But essentially, some of the things that are changing this year are one, policies, right? Like we know that the state of Texas has implemented policies in the last few months around criminalization of homelessness that make revisions to our criminalization policy necessary. Um, there are additional policy updates around general member and stakeholder participation in the operation of the CoC. So we hope to use the general meetings as an opportunity for folks to provide feedback to staff and ultimately to the CoC board about the direction of the CoC. But also, we, as I think Daphne was mentioning in her State of the CoC address, have done a lot of work around development of committees, and so update around that committee structure, um, and uh, and again the approval process. So I would encourage folks to take the opportunity. I know everyone is super busy right now, right? But we're going to put the governance charter up for public comment later today. It'll be up for a little while, but really encouraging folks to spend a little bit of time with that document because it's your document, right? If you consider yourself to be a member of the CoC, that is your document, and so. I don't know that I have a whole lot more to say about the governance charter, except for again, we are hoping to do the review through the public comment period. You'll see in the document that's posted for public comment later today that there are comments from staff where folks where changes have been made, but it's a line item revision, so there's a lot of strike through text and words added here and there. But where the content has changed, there will be comments. Um, and yeah, I don't know if I have really a whole lot else to say about the governance charter. Are there any questions? I guess I could, if you have any questions about the governance charter, please put it in the chat. I heard someone come off of mute, so I'm thinking that maybe that might have been Mary that wanted to say something, but um,
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that we on staff have proposed some changes that we would love to hear your feedback on. But really, this is an opportunity for you to address any section of the charter, even if we haven't already made a comment about it or proposed a change to it. You're also welcome to propose additions to the charter. As Jim said, it really is the members' document that outlines what the structure of the CoC is and particularly what the decision making process is. So how general members can get involved, how committee members can get involved, how board members are the final decision makers on policies, anything like that that you're interested in. We'd love to hear your comments on so that we are helping to operate the CoC in the way that you all want it to be operated. All right. I don't see any questions in the chat, so thank you, Jim, for that review. And again, please look for it on our website, and you're welcome to submit public comment. All right, next we're going to move to our celebration of accomplishments year in review video that our team put together. So Craig, if you can cue that up, we all hope you enjoy this look back at the past year.
All right, it's working on.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Sorry, I didn't realize either that there was no audio to this video, but hopefully you were able to read the slides and see the pictures of so many things that were happening across our CoC over the past year. And thank you to all of you who were involved in any way in that. All right, now we are going to move over to a topic that Jim mentioned briefly. In our community conversation times, we want to make sure that we recognize that you have an opportunity to talk with other general members in attendance about any topic of your choice. Again, this isn't just an open time that you can talk with the staff, talk with general members, ask someone to do something or to focus on something. So I'm going to turn that over to Kristen Zakor, and she's going to lead you through that.
Thank you, Mary. And just to reiterate, thank you all so much for all your hard work over this last year. I know this has been another challenging year, but we appreciate everyone's dedication and hard work in your communities. And we cannot do this hard work without you. So thank you so much for all you do. As Mary said, this portion of our meeting is really for y'all to engage in any conversation that you may want to with other general members across the Balance of State CoC. So this is just your opportunity to type into the chat if you have a question about, how a community is tackling serving folks that are at risk of homelessness, or how folks are applying for funding to be able to facilitate permanent housing projects in their communities. This is really y'all's time to ask any of those questions or reach out and try to connect in a different way. So I'm going to just wait for a moment to see if there's any questions or feedback or conversation that gets started in the chat. But once again, this is y'all's time to ask anything of your fellow general members. So please do not hesitate to start the conversation here. But just, reiterating this is an open forum. Jim put in a question. He said, I'm curious, I know Vashil talked about it, but are communities responding to the statewide camping ban? I think that's a great question to get an understanding of how folks are reacting to this statewide camping ban. Is anybody in a specific community doing something that they'd like to share with the rest of the group? To receive help with emergency shelter. So if anybody has any suggestions for Shane on ways to acquire some funding to help facilitate emergency shelter, I think it would be a great way for him to help navigate those conversations in his community.
Hey, this is Jim. And I know uh, that we talked a little bit about this, I think, at the last general meeting. But I'm curious whether or not, I mean, there's a ton of money that came out around the CARES and the American Rescue Plan Act. I'm curious if anyone is having success with their local participating jurisdiction to even have conversations about, you know, using home ARP dollars to build non-congregate shelter that would then like convert to affordable housing or, and I know, and Shane, I'm trying to get at an answer to your question. I think the short answer is like there's no easy answer, but there are a variety of resources out right now and they are all very localized, so it's hard to say, you know, what might work best in the Kerrville area versus what would work best in Texarkana, for example. Um, yeah, Craig, maybe you can put that TDHCA newsletter sign up in the chat.
Yeah,
That would be
thank you,
cool.
Craig.
The one thing that I will say about that all the time is you have to go in there and check every couple months to make sure you're still signed up because for whatever reason you'll sometimes get booted from that newsletter sign up. I don't know why. It's happened to me several times. It hasn't happened much in the last year or so, but you know, just be cognizant of that. I don't think it's intentional.
All right. While we wait for Craig to be able to plop that link into the chat, we're going to go ahead and move on. And please, y'all know that if at any point you're interested in connecting with other community members to learn about specific ways that folks are tackling homelessness in different parts of Texas, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're more than happy to facilitate those peer-to-peer learning conversations. So the next thing that we have on the agenda is to talk about general topic meetings for the 21-22 fiscal year. So Craig, if you could please open up the poll. We have a poll question for y'all, just so that we can get a sense of what are some of the topics that folks are interested in learning over this next fiscal year. So if you'd please take a minute to read what some of these options are, you can select as many that apply to you. But once again, what we're trying to get at is a sense of what folks would like to learn about in regards to these general meetings. Wonderful. Thank you all for participating. This gives us a really good sense of how to structure these meetings moving forward based off of what y'all are interested in. So we will take this poll question back to the team and help to craft what these meetings look like moving forward. The last thing that I wanted to note before I turn it over is that after each one of these general meetings, you will receive a post-meeting survey from Adobe Connect. And we're really interested in y'all, if you have the opportunity, to take some time feedback and try to incorporate it as best as we can when crafting the agendas for all these meetings. So thank y'all. I appreciate everybody. And now I'm going to pass it back over to Mary.
All right, thanks, Kristen. Well, that is it for our meeting today. We want to let you know that the next meeting will be in 2 months on December 8th, and that will be by webinar. So as usual, look out for newsletters, our website, our social media, to stay in touch with what's going to be the main topic. We will look at the answers you gave us today to see what main topic we might address at the meeting next. We'll also have our regular community conversation time. So like with today, if you have some topics that you want us to address, you have questions for other attendees, that would be a good time to do it. Again, that is going to be Wednesday, December 8th, back at our usual time, 2 o'clock. All right. Again, thank you all for coming today, getting our week started off right by sharing some time with all of you. Thanks to all of our team for working with us on the meeting today, and we hope all of you have a fantastic week. Thank you. Oh, we will also stay on the call for a little bit after the meeting. If there's anything that you all want to talk to us about as staff. And just to note that on the last couple of pages of the agenda are ways that you can get involved to become a CoC member. Well, anyone who lives or works in our CoC area is considered to be a member, but there are ways you can get more involved, like following us along on social media, checking out our website, joining a committee. We are accepting nominations right now for the Strategic Planning Committee. You should have gotten that information in the newsletter that came out last Friday. If you're not on our email list, you can subscribe to it. And our committee reports are on the final page of the agenda. Oh, yay. Thanks, everyone, for writing in. And we will see you next time.
Hey, Craig, did you see the question? Is there? Oh, you already got it.
Yes, there will be a link to the recording. We put those on our website. Oh, and we're going to be sending those out to attendees with the meeting minutes.
Hey, Craig, I might have missed it, but what NOFO came out on Friday?
This is a new
Was
one.
it the
I'm still
Housing
having
Stability Services?
No, this is it's through it's through CDBG, but it's the Community Resiliency Program, CRP. The CRP allows for non-entitlement cities and counties to create, expand, or enhance public facilities that provide mental care, social services, and/or non-congregate housing and increase the community's long-term resiliency and ability to mitigate current and future coronavirus outbreaks.
There you go, Shane.
Yeah,
Still
I've already
on.
forwarded it to him.
Cool.
Minimum is
Yes, I wrote that down, so I'm good.
yeah. I think the
That will help
minimum is like
because that's one of the crucial things.
I cracked it open this morning. Minimum's
Yeah, because that's
500,000, max
I
is
was
5 million.
surprised that. Okay, well that's good. That's good to know. I was surprised the Salvation Army at that time didn't have funding for their emergency shelter from grants from the CoC Center that's here in Kerrville. They just utilize the store, and that's not providing enough funding for ongoing support. So that's where I'm hoping that working with if the other entities that other nonprofits are able to pay people to stay there for longer periods of time, then that will help create some funding. And all of the places that I've communicated with have said, yes, we need them. But it's one reason why we send them to hotels, because we can keep them there longer without transitioning them more. And they also said that with them having to leave at 7:30 and not being familiar with the community, they don't know where to go. And it also, you know, a traffic victim, they're, you know, so that creates an instability. So hopefully this coordination will help provide that support. But Salvation Army, the person who's the captain came aboard and they are new. So they've only been there like a couple of months, and they just did a self-assessment of their from the Salvation Army division to come in and do a self-assessment. Now they're going to be doing over the next 3 months a third-party community assessment of needs in the community. So we're hoping that they'll connect with the stakeholders within our community that are saying, yes, we need your shelter. We need more extended stay. We need, more staffing, and then hopefully be able to work out, a way to provide that support. So I'm hoping that will take place and we'll get some stability there.
And I know that you answered this, but I wasn't clear on all the details. Other social service agencies are going to pay the Salvation Army to shelter the folks that they're working with?
Yes. And so basically, the Salvation Army will still set up the parameters or the boundaries for with their memorandum of understanding. And so the nonprofits will then, instead of paying a hotel, they'll pay a lower cost, a lower fee, maybe $20 a night in order to generate income for an extended stay. Because like, for instance, Medina Children's Home, it takes them 5 days to vet a person to see if they qualify in order to be in their program. Well, Salvation Army only allows them 3 days. So, that's the difference of $40 a night, extra $40 a night, $60 a night at a hotel versus $20 a night at the Salvation Army. So it's a win-win for both, And so we're hoping that the local homeless coalition here will kind of be like a wagon wheel where, we're a center hub, but there's two-way supports. There's providing connection through the hub to try to generate communication so that you're not having to go to every agency. You can go to the local homeless coalition to kind of build, like, for instance, the Salvation Army said, hey, just have them call me and I'll set up a memorandum of understanding. So just this two-way path will help bridge some of those gaps within the community. So that's the goal at this point. That's the emergency goal, because if you don't have an emergency shelter, you have nowhere for people to go, so
Together to make use of what already exists, but wasn't being used maybe in in the way that it could best meet a lot of different groups' needs. So that's really exciting to hear.
Shane, does
does
that convention center not fund anything for the TSA? The CoC Center, does it not share any funding with the shelter?
The money for the CoC Center, it's a nonprofit organization.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a for-profit organization. And I thought that they did provide funding to them, but it ended up that they decided, when I talked with the Salvation Army there, they said that those funds go back to the Salvation Army and to the funding of the facility. So
got you.
But yeah, none of those funds go directly to them. It's just the shelter, or just the store. The store, which again, there's a lot of resale stores in our community, so it's not going to generate a huge amount of money. So that's where we're trying to hopefully build that networking with them, because it was something in which we were like, okay, so how do we get funding to them? And the way that I see it is, I see, a lot of people, the stakeholders that are in each nonprofit agency, they can set up a shelter fund that people can give to. Because I know whenever I was working with some people I've worked with several people to get housing through churches. They were living in a tent and they had to at one of the local campgrounds. Of course, you can only stay there 2 weeks, and then they would have to move to another. They had 7 kids and living in a tent. And so we were able to coordinate with a local church, and then that church helped to kind of get food and things to them, and then help get them first and last month's rent and get them into a place which they still live at today, after that was 3 years ago. And so their stakeholders, if they could just create a fund that's directly, and even BCFS, they said, well, we're trying to think of how we could create funds. And I said, do it through your private general giving. If that way it's non-discretionary funds, so that then you can target that money without having to go through all the red tape, so to speak. And then they would be able to, each agency has that, then they would be able to utilize those funds in this way. And they can just make it, this is for housing people in transition. And then that also gives them time that if it ends up that they can't meet that need, then we still have a housing area, and then they can transfer case managers to help. If it ends up it's, a sober living need or a domestic violence need, or then they can transfer case management through the Salvation Army. So that is that's the emergency goal right now that we're trying to tackle. And all the nonprofits that I've talked to are like, yes, we need this. This would work great. And so now it's just a matter of getting everything rolling.
Yep.
So that's where we're at. Well, when we had our first local homeless coalition, well, actually, we had the meeting before we even had the local homeless coalition meeting, the first one. Me and Kathy Turner with the Veterans Affairs set up a meeting with the Salvation Army, because we knew that they were going to be a crucial component to the homelessness, and they're kind of, emergency shelters foundation. So we set up a meeting with them, and then that's when they disclosed that they were looking at closing it down because they don't have enough support. And so, of course, then that's when whenever we started talking with them, and then they said we don't have any funding, then I suggested, I said, would you be open to having nonprofits create or pay to have people stay for extended stays? Because that's one of the barriers, that we're facing, that nonprofits are facing within the Salvation Army, and why some of them can't send people to you because they need longer than those number of days, and they don't want to uproot people each time. And so they said, yeah, let's look into that. And so that's how that got started. Well, I will definitely keep you guys posted. And again, I text in there or on the thing, appreciate all your help. When Jen gave me that statistic that we're within the county, the emergency shelters, the only emergency shelter within 19 counties, that information right there created a catalyst for the Salvation Army to say, wow, there is a greater need. They have to be able to substantiate for their funding and finances to say, yeah. And they said this, they said, because we're not only in Kerr County, we are trying to extend ourselves beyond Kerr County. And that helps us to create a motivation within the board to say, to renovate. And so the goal is that they're looking at possibly, the board has already suggested renovating it, even though they were thinking of the captain was thinking, well, we may need to close it down because there's not enough support. But now the board was saying, we want to renovate this place and possibly make it better if it comes back through this community assessment that this is a gap and that it could be utilized a lot more effectively within the community. So hopefully that will transpire. Yes. So again, thank you guys for all your help, and we'll keep you posted. Yeah, definitely. yeah, just keep me posted, and I'll be glad to update anytime.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
Thank you,
Shane.
Shane.
Bye.
Okay. Bye bye.
Craig, when you said thanks, Shane, it reminded me of Donka Shane. All right. Anyone else have any
Alrighty.
questions for us or any comments? If not, we will go ahead and go, and we will see you in December.
All right. You have a good rest of your week.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.